Good morning, Jillian Reilly. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Paul. How are you?
Terrific. Excited to talk to you about rewriting the rules, something new and exciting that, I think senior leaders, executive leaders need right now, at least the mindset they need about rewriting the rules. And we see that with a lot of organizations that, what's worked in the past, Jill, isn't necessarily what's working today or will in the future.
Yeah, 100%. I think, we know that the old rules no longer apply. That's pretty obvious. But, are we intentionally creating new ones? Do we know if everybody even knows what the rules are or if we're all
Yeah,
operating by the same ones? So I'm
yeah.
really excited to put this out there and, yeah, get people involved in the whole idea of writing their own rules.
I think there was, there's always been a challenge with leaders as far as, different generations in the workforce and so forth. But I think it's more significant today than it's ever been. And, that's not an indictment in any way about the younger workers. Maybe it's just an opportunity and we're more conscious of it. And frankly, I think if we're going to thrive instead of just survive, we need to capitalize on that. It's a real opportunity, Jill, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Oh, definitely. I think it is. I mean, the whole having five generations in the workforce means you've got five unique perspectives, five unique operating styles, which I think the more you name that, own that, work with that rather than against it, see it as an opportunity to figure out what everybody's best contribution is and how you kind of make it all fit together instead of, just kind of struggling to create common ground, struggling to create a common way. I
Yeah,
think it's a tremendous opportunity because you've got great wisdom. You've got, on the one end, you've got incredible, savvy and energy and future focus on the other end. So I think it's a great time to kind of bring those
yeah,
people together and figure out a way.
yeah. We all need to tap into that energy, don't we? I don't
I
know
know I
about you,
do.
but yeah,
Anytime there's a younger person around me, I will, hang on their energetic coattails very happily.
yes, no doubt. Hey, before we get too far away from the title of the solution that we're talking about here, let's talk for a minute about why we do need to rewrite the rules. Why, and I said it and do say it on a regular basis. What got us here isn't going to get us there. That type of an approach.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the old world work or the old ways work anymore, Jill? I mean, let's talk about some of the more specific or tangible things that have changed. What are you seeing in your experiences as far as why we need to change?
Yeah, I wish I had it with me, but there's this McKinsey graph that shows the rate of change and the sort
Hmm.
of depth of change over the last 2 decades. And, it's like this sort of heartbeat that becomes a mountain cliff
Yeah.
when you get to 2020 and onwards. So I think the
Yeah.
simple reality is we are experiencing, as we all know through our own lived experience, a rate and a depth of change that makes it almost impossible to rely on business as usual mindsets or even know what business as usual is because you're
Yeah.
dealing with so many shifting variables and a context that's keeping you on your toes all the time that I think the need to be more intentional about adaptation to these changing circumstances is real.
Yeah.
And I think we've all lived it over the past. Certainly, I think 2020 would mark the most obvious sort of point in our minds of when, our understanding of the world of work began to shift visibly, demonstrably in our own lives from where do you work
Hmm.
to,
Right.
how you work. So those norms that used to tell us how to behave, what was acceptable, how we were supposed to operate, they've really unraveled. And some of that's great. We're loving some of it. There's a lot more room for us to kind of make our own way. But on the other hand, it's an easy driver of confusion, hesitation, conflict.
Yeah.
So I think within that context of a lot of disruption and really deeply shifting norms, leaders are required to pay attention to those sort of shared sets of rules that keep us operating on the same page.
I think that disjointedness, how about that for a word?
Mm.
Don't ask me to
Yeah.
spell it, I can barely say it, but I
But I
think
know
that
exactly what you mean.
that state of being disjointed, um, I think, we see that with a lot of leadership teams today. So here we're going to
Yeah.
shift from the individuals to the teams, Jill.
Yeah.
Um, you know, as you just alluded to, we have gone in different directions. And I think just within a team, you've got leaders that have different priorities and different styles and expectations and so forth. And, that
Yeah.
leads to some really misaligned, if not ineffective, leadership teams. Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you've one got individuals on that team who are under a lot of pressure, who are themselves, working with their own people in a way that requires a lot of their time and attention. And I think this is really important, attention to relationships. So I think the kind of
Mm,
relational nature of leadership is ever more important, and that,
yeah.
that takes a lot of time and energy. You then sit down together and you're trying to kind of establish a shared set of priorities, expectation, both. So, you've got operational issues, which are now up for grabs. Are we working remote? Are we working here? There's a whole lot of things that used to be accepted as a given way of working that aren't anymore. So you're probably attending to a lot of issues at an operational level that take up a lot of time and can be very conflict led. You've then got sort of strategic priorities and strategic issues, which in that context that I was describing of rapid change, it's like, you might feel very challenged to know where your priorities should be when you don't even know what next year looks like.
Right.
So I think it's a very demanding environment on a number of different levels when a lot of things are in question, a lot of our old ways of executing on long-term plans feel like they don't work anymore. So,
No.
your disjointedness, I think, is right. It's like, I'm not sure anymore what's right. I'm not sure if I'm making progress. I feel like it's kind of one step forward, two steps back, or I'm constantly firefighting. That's a lot of what I hear.
You talk about focusing on the operational issues, layer on top of that the changes in consumer expectations. So,
Right.
regardless
Perfect.
of
Yeah.
what business that you're in, the consumer expectations, the delivery expectations is so different today than it was 5, 6, 10 years ago for sure.
Yeah.
It just adds another layer of confusion, uncertainty, maybe even disjointedness, huh?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's the kind of, are we on the right track? Is this the right way? One of the things I talk quite a lot about in my book is this, the kind of collapse of a capital R right way of doing things. Like,
Hmm.
people are kind of figuring things out on their own, and it leaves a lot up in question for you to say, I mean, and just the basic conversation about where you work and how you work. Everybody will have a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
And as you say, there's just multiple layers of demands, priorities, expectations. So within that, communication is key. Explicit understandings are key. When you leave things implicit, when you leave things, to for people to kind of, figure out, that's ripe ground for you to waste a lot of time and
Yeah.
drive a lot of dissatisfaction, frankly.
Now, one of the things that we talk to our clients about a lot is, yeah, you need to have that alignment. You need to bring your teams together, get them all on the same page, and so forth. However, we're not looking to create robots here. We're not cloning one type of leader, right?
Right.
It's having a shared vision, shared values, priorities, etc. But it's also that individuality shining through. And I think as I look at organizations going forward, that's a clear distinction that needs to be made at the highest most level is yeah, we're a team, but we also have to bring our own skills and personalities and expertise to the table.
Absolutely. I think that, that is probably priority number one is figuring out how to get the best out of each individual. And as you say, lead as a verb, not as a noun. So you will do it differently than me. I will have my own way again. So, we would be looking for a general consensus around some of the major aspects of our approach to leadership, but we would respect the fact that at the application level, individual by individual, there will be different ways of working. And we want to take advantage of that, not see that as, as a threat to our
Right.
coherence or cohesiveness. And I think that's really important is that how do you flip the script on some of these things as you did at the start with the generational aspect to see it as, ripe with possibility as opposed to a burden for you to try to, you know, manage and flatten out and quiet down and put away. It's like, no, this is where you can start to get some of the best out of people.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's talk about some of the things that we will bring to the table. And we talked a little bit there about individualism. One of the things that I think we're going to want to do at the very outset or close to the beginning of the engagement is have every individual take a look in the mirror and kind of self assess, self identify. You know, what do I bring to the table? What are my most valuable contributions to the team? And then, of course, the other side of the coin is where do I need to go? What do I need to do bigger, better, and different? That really becomes the foundation for individual growth, individual
Yeah,
maturity
totally.
as part of this process.
Yeah, I mean, I think self-awareness is self-awareness, self-reflection, self-observation. I mean, I think, this leadership in self within this complex world has become more and more important because you're dealing with things that are super challenging. You're probably more confused, disjointed, use whatever word you want, knowing yourself well enough to kind of self-manage through all of
Yeah.
these things has become such a critical asset to an individual, to their leadership team. So I think you and I agreed that that had to be the starting point. Like we can't just jump into leadership team conversations if we haven't spent some time allowing each person to self-reflect, look in the mirror. And that's a gift that you give yourself because then you can work with that stuff. You can then build on that in terms of, as you say, where do you want to go, where do you want to
Hmm.
go from here?
Well, I love the word in the title of your book, permissions. Give yourself permission
Mm,
to make those changes, make that evolution. But I think there's also part of it, Jill, where there really is a breaking of the mold or
mm,
setting of new expectations, new definitions. I have so many leaders, including C-suite leaders, who tell me, "Oh, I'm an introvert.
mm,
I can't do that because I'm an introvert."
mm.
And they see that as a negative instead of let's tap into that and make it a positive. And so that's part of the
Yeah.
self-reflection that we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the invitation of today's workplaces is to bring your best, to find out what you can offer and to, you know, value that offer, whatever, package it comes in. The days of sort of, little robots, as you said, all sort of sitting on the floor, tapping away, executing on the plan are over. And I know a lot of people will see that as a burden, a management burden, a human resource burden, but that's where it is and that's where it's going to continue to go. So I think let's work with that. Let's work with the individuality. Let's really find out what people want to offer. And then yes, using my language in ways that work for each one of them and for the team, allow them to give themselves permission to bring it so that they're, fired up to show what they can do, not sort of
Right.
head down doing what they're told. I think today's workplace has to function on individual excellence rather than individual compliance, which is not to say that everybody's running
Mm.
around doing their own thing, but that, they really feel allowed to bring their best. And that's, I think, one of the implicit offers of rewriting the rules is how do you get people to bring their buy-in and bring their best?
Right. Okay. So on the front end, we're going to kind of lay a foundation of self-identification, self-reflection, etc. But then, kind of on the back end and then ongoing, it's let's keep on the track. Let's keep our eye on the priorities and the objectives and so forth. And I think we all fall into the trap of getting distracted and chasing the shiny new object, and before you know it, the year's gone, and it's like I haven't grown, I haven't evolved, etc. I think the one-on-one support that you and I are prepared to deliver is critical to all leaders, just to keep them on the track, just to keep bringing them back to center and saying, hey, let's stay focused on what we said our priorities were. That's something I wish I had 20 years ago. Uh,
Yeah.
I'd be on a beach right now, maybe if I had
No, no. Um,
that.
it's so funny. I almost said exactly that thing. I don't know a single human who doesn't benefit from, call them whatever you want to call them, a guide, a companion, a coach, a sounding board, whatever, and more than ever. I
Yeah.
mean, one of, again, the points of my book is that in this world where everything's challenging us, our own personal growth, the growth of the self, is now a strategic priority. It's not some nice to do once you finish, everything else. It's like your ability to keep showing up, to keep adapting to the changing reality, to keep solving different problems, to keep thinking creatively about stuff that maybe you feel like just keeps showing up on your desk. It's not easy. And I think
Mhm.
what I hear from a lot of people I work with is just, you know, I'm challenged in ways that 10 years ago I wasn't.
Right.
Um, I'm having to have conversations with people that I'd never imagined I'd have to have.
Right.
So to have a sounding board, to have a person there who, as you say, can help you not only reflect, but also keep going on the path that have set out for yourself, that is an incredible resource that I hope, will knit together individuals with, the collective sort of goals of the organization and obviously with the team as well.
The last thing I'll add on to that is not unlike what I said about being an introvert. Needing a coach, it isn't a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a
No.
sign of strength. It's a sign of wanting and doing what you need to do to find that next level. But especially younger leaders, it's like, I've got to
Mm,
do this myself. I've got to do this
yeah,
myself. My boss is
yeah.
looking to me to do this. That's an unrealistic expectations many times. Having a coach, having that sounding board like you're talking about, is actually a sign of strength. So I hope leaders see it that way.
Well, I think what they should also realize is that there is not a single highly effective senior leader in the world today who doesn't have a coach or who
Yeah,
hasn't had one at some point. The truth
yeah,
is they've been a luxury. Most people most people can't afford from either a
right.
time or, another resource level. So the people who are, wanting to be way out in front, the people who are highly visible, the people who are, leading some of the biggest and most complex organizations in the world know absolutely that they need help and that they will only get better. And
Right.
I think we want people to go into this with that attitude of, cool, how do we keep finding a better way to move through a world that's challenging us in ways that it didn't previously.
The last point I think I want to emphasize as it relates to rewriting the rules is we've used the word the way a couple times here. This really is a tailored solution. It's not turnkey, it's not out of the box. It really is, we've got the bones of it in place, but it really is, it needs to fit within the culture, it needs to fit within the expectations, the focus, etc. of the organization. And so there's going to be extensive effort on the front end to really understand that and really become intimate with what are we trying to accomplish here and what do we want this to look like in the long run. So I think it's really important to understand that when we say the way, it's not our way, it's
No.
primarily going to be your way.
Oh yeah, and that's a very good distinction. Thank you for making that. I mean, that was my whole point earlier, is that there isn't just one way. Um, so let's take advantage of that. Let's get super intentional and clear about what the way that we want to work together, the way that we believe works best, the way that we think, fosters the most growth, the most contribution. Um, so yeah, I mean, my favorite word, bespoke. This is totally bespoke. We are making this for each client. This is not one size fits all, because it's not a one size fits all world. There
Yeah,
isn't a manual for this. We're all
yeah.
making it up as we go. And I think the point here is, all right, let's, raise the bar on making it up as you go so that we have a clear understanding of, what it is we're making here as a team in terms of our way of operating together.
All right, that's a great point to kind of bring this to a close because, again, we call this rewriting the rules. Um, and yeah, I would think that in the past, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there was the way and you
Yeah.
fit to the way. So we're
Yeah.
rewriting that. But there's
Hmm.
also this individualism within the context of the team and the organization. We're talking about rewriting the rules so that we really tap into this individualism that is going to take us to levels that we've never been before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, having worked in this, we've both done this work for a very long time. And I would say that, it's a very different world to 10, 20 years ago, where you walked into any office and you could kind of expect certain things. I mean, I walk into them now and they're each really different.
Yeah,
They've got their own way. Now, maybe that came by default. Maybe that's just, 10, 15, 20, 100 people, however many, showing up and creating that. But what we're saying is your way can be your differentiator. It can
yeah,
be the thing that makes you, as you said, particularly effective, particularly unique, the employer of choice,
yeah.
the leader in your field, unconsciously, just kind of coming together and trying to make all this up without that sort of explicit way, to me is a recipe for dissatisfaction and sluggish performance. Um, so, yeah, in a space where there isn't one way, make your own, make it,
Yeah,
and do it
yeah.
the way you want to.
All right, great stuff, Jill. Thanks for doing this, and to our viewers, we look forward to talking to you about how to create your way and how to rewrite the rules at your organization. Jill, go get a drink of water so you stop
I
coughing,
will.
and I'm going to go get a dictionary and look up bespoke so I can use that in the future.
You will be using it, trust me. It's going to be
I
your new
know.
word of choice.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.